Hundreds of protesters in Mozambique have taken to the streets, burning tires and calling for change. These protests erupted in response to insert cause of protests, e.g., economic hardship, political dissatisfaction, or specific government policies. We are tired of empty promises. We demand justice and a better future for our families. Authorities have responded with a visible show of force, aiming to contain the demonstrations and reopen major roads blocked by the burning tires. The protests have caused significant disruptions in the location, affecting transportation and daily activities for thousands of residents. These protests highlight growing frustration among citizens who feel their concerns have been ignored by those in power. As the day comes to an end, the protesters remain resolute, vowing to continue their fight until their voices are heard. Whether this protest will bring about meaningful change remains uncertain, but it has sent a strong message to those in power: the people's patience is running out. In Mozambique, the confirmation of the ruling party Frelimo's victory in the disputed October presidential election has ignited widespread protests across the country. Demonstrators have taken to the streets, burning tires and erecting barricades, particularly in the capital city, Maputo, and other major urban centers. The unrest follows the Constitutional Council's validation of Daniel Chapo's win, securing 65% of the vote, a result contested by opposition leader Venancio Mondlane, who alleges electoral fraud. The protests have led to significant disruptions, including the closure of major roads and a high-security prison riot near Maputo, resulting in over 1,500 inmates escaping. The international community has expressed concern over the situation, with calls for restraint and dialogue to address the underlying issues. The Mozambican government faces increasing pressure to engage with opposition groups and address allegations of electoral misconduct to restore peace and stability in the nation. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for dialogue and a peaceful resolution to the crisis, emphasizing the importance of upholding human rights and the rule of law. Amnesty International, the organization, has condemned the Mozambican authorities' violent crackdown on protesters, highlighting that more than 100 people, including children, have been killed by security forces during the post-election protests. Amnesty International reports indicate that at least 10 children have been killed by security forces during the protests, with the organization calling for an immediate end to the use of unnecessary and security forces against post-election protests. Southern African Development Community (SADC), the regional body, has expressed concern over the situation, with member states calling for restraint and dialogue. An extraordinary summit on Mozambique was convened on November 20th in Harare, Zimbabwe, to address the crisis. The Mozambican government, led by the ruling Frelimo party, has deployed security forces to quell the protests, resulting in significant casualties. Authorities have accused opposition leaders of attempting to overthrow the government and have imposed bans on demonstrations. Legal actions have been initiated against opposition figures, further complicating prospects for dialogue. Opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has called for continued protests until the election results are overturned, alleging electoral fraud. He has outlined conditions for dialogue, including the release of arrested protesters and the establishment of mechanisms to address electoral grievances. The ongoing unrest has led to significant disruptions, including the escape of over 1,500 prisoners during riots, with 33 inmates killed and 15 injured. The violence has also resulted in economic disruptions, affecting foreign business operations and leading to a humanitarian crisis as thousands flee to neighboring countries. The international community continues to monitor the situation closely, advocating for peaceful dialogue and urging the Mozambican government to address allegations of electoral misconduct. The path to restoring peace and stability in Mozambique hinges on the willingness of all parties to engage in constructive discussions and uphold democratic principles. Maputo, Mozambique, AP, violence that engulfed Mozambique after the country's highest court confirmed ruling Frelimo party presidential candidate Daniel Chapo as the winner of disputed October 9th elections killed at least 21 people, including 2 police officers, authorities said Tuesday. Mozambique Interior Minister Paul Ronda told a news conference in Maputo late Tuesday that a wave of violence and looting was sparked by the court's announcement a day earlier. He said it was led by mostly youthful supporters of losing candidate Venancio Mondlane, who received 24% of the vote, second to Chapo, who got 65%. From the preliminary survey, in the last 24 hours, 236 acts of violence were recorded throughout the national territory that resulted in 21 deaths, of which 2 members of the police of the Republic of Mozambique also died, Ronda said. He said 13 civilians and 12 police were injured. Runda said 25 vehicles were set on fire, including 2 police vehicles. He added that 11 police subunits in a penitentiary were attacked and vandalized and 86 inmates were freed. Tensions were high in the country ahead of the Constitutional Council ruling on Monday, and violent protests started immediately after the announcement was made. The election was hotly contested, with many young people supporting independent candidate Venancio Mondlane, who says the vote was rigged and encouraged demonstrations. Protesters chanted "Power to the people" and "A Frelimo must fall," and some blockaded streets with burning tires and held homemade signs supporting Mondlane. "This is it. If we don't stand up now, nothing will change," said Julia Makamo, 55, a street vendor and mother.